switch over the screen and make sure that's working. Hold on a second. Yep, we should be on the right screen. Okay. All righty. There we go. Josh, whenever you are ready, we are at 6 o'clock.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. First off is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
So the only thing I received, we do have Dave and Declan here, but they are here for an agenda item. The only thing I received, which was also sent to the board members, I just wanted to bring it up in public comment, was a email regarding pickleball. There were approximately 90 signatures accompanying this. But I did want to just make sure that you guys had all seen it. Collapse that. To make sure every commissioner was aware that it was there. This is kind of related to our capital projects process. So it's there. It is in your email. They are looking at, they would like to have, you know, a spot that's for pickleball courts, permanent pickleball courts. We do have a lot of good usage, so just wanted to make sure you had that shared with you. That's all. Yep. That's all the public comment I had.
Okay. Was there any anything anybody want to say about this, or we just want to move on? Everybody get a chance to look at it.
I did, and
yeah. My only question.
Order of it. I thought it was fabulous, and I appreciate those signatures. I'm going to be a staunch advocate of this pickleball thing because I think for the expense, we create something really wonderful for the community.
Yeah, my only question about it was, Doug, did we get any other feedback on their plan or idea to improve that one court, the existing court closest to the trees?
Well, we can talk about a little bit of that in our capital projects kind of review when we get to that agenda item, and commissioners can comment. I didn't get any more feedback from them. What they're looking for is they want to partner with us and work with us is what I'm getting from their letter. They would love to have something more permanent, but they also want to continue to have something ongoing that's available. The current location in the wintertime is not going to be conducive, but we've already discussed that, and we can follow up on that in our regular agenda item.
Okay. All right. Okay. If that's it, let's go to the approval of the minutes.
Okay. We have the minutes from August 19th. Any questions on them? Any concerns?
No. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye, Krista.
Aye, Eric.
Matt says aye.
Josh, aye.
Okay.
All right. Next item, the vouchers list.
Let's do the treasurer's report first.
Report, yeah.
Okay. There you go. So the cumulative slide, again, if you look at that line in the chart, is the budget. The magenta line is the budget plan, and up is good. Below the line is unfavorable, above the line is favorable. And then the blue line that stops in August is actual. You see, again, up is good. So us being above, the blue line being above the magenta line is, we're on it, is the objective. You can see we were below it for a little while, and now we're above it to the tune of roughly 64,000 in August, and that's a cumulative number. And you'll see the spread here in a second. We're still down in revenue, but we've controlled expenses to the point that we're favorable net. So there's the revenue profile. Again, it's mostly programs. That's the cumulative month by month through August. So you can see it was going up in big chunks, and now it's in smaller increments. But the total is 102,000 unfavorable, almost entirely due to programs revenue. And then on the expense side, you can see we've been able to control expenses to the tune of 166,000. You can see a bulk of that is controlling programs expenses for programs we're not running. Some of those are fixed costs we can't do anything about, but controlling what we can. And so the net is 64 or 62K favorable. And then you'll see the last slide shows the fund balances on plan. Any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, you have the voucher list. Can you pull up the updated voucher list?
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes with all the programs I have open to do this live stream and everything, my computer freezes up for a second. So I apologize if and when that occurs. All right, so the changes, I'm just going to go right up to the top to make sure I caught them all. The changes from when the vouchers came out on Friday. We had an invoice from Water Services for water testing for $183. We have had a bad water test on the actual well source. So we are chlorinating that out and trying to clean that up and seeing what the issue is. That could be a bigger problem if that does not go away. So we're keeping a very close eye on that, but that is just additional water testing. We had a refund for one of the softball teams. We had a softball league umpire payout, some sand, and skimboarding instruction, some supplies, some fuel payment to South Whitby School District, and that was about it. So those are the changes from this Friday when you saw them last. Any questions?
When did this water test issue first arise?
I believe it was Tuesday, Tom.
It was actually about a week prior. We had a bad water test on Tuesday, and I was notified, and she came out, I believe, on Friday and had to do 4 follow-up tests. And the same tap that tested bad the first time tested bad, and the water coming out of the well tested positive for total coliform.
Were there any more questions on the vouchers?
I can see updated total what is it, 81,580.97?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers from M&O for 81,580.97.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Eric, aye.
Krista, I.
Matt, aye.
Josh, aye. All right, let's move on to the staff report.
Okay, staff report. Co-ed softball, we were able to secure a waiver and we were able to resume the league after a 4-week hiatus. We lost some teams due to the pause. Did cancel the tournament portion as tournaments were not permitted, so we did cancel that portion. Pickleball numbers have declined, probably due to smoke and heat and other pickleball options. Unlikely that we'll be permitted to return indoors to the gym until schools have reopened to full usage. They're probably just going to keep everybody out of there to reduce costs. Fall programs have been a challenge. We're working, but instructors are very hesitant for their own health. The reality of dealing with youth and the responsibility for the health of their participants. So we've had a lot of hesitancy there. Youth basketball league is on hold until we know we'll be able to get into the gyms, looking at 3-on-3 league to keep sizes, interactions low and no spectators. So, but we do have some photos here. There's some photos of youth tennis, some swim team photos, model rockets. And then we had some track and field camp, some kayak camp, the SUP camp, the cheer camp, pickleball and intro to pickleball. For facilities and grounds, last month has brought our highest temperatures of the year. We're still trying to keep up with irrigation demands. Lower booster pump had a short out situation recently. We were able to fix it and are still operational. Supply chains have been impacted from the shutdowns. We've been waiting for over a month for sprinkler heads, so a lot of our repairs are kind of delayed, and we're having to, chewing gum, kind of stick stuff together and deal with that as we go. We are working on bids on the doghouse roof replacement to see if we can still fit that into the budget this year by the end of the year. If we continue to be able to manage the budget as we have been, we might be able to sneak that into the budget and have that done. And then also on the agenda today, we have the quote for the engineered wood fiber for surfacing for the playground. This is something we do every couple of years. It is in the budget, and we'll talk about that in the regular agenda. I did meet with Jennifer, Josh, and Deborah Waterman, and Jason. His last name's escaping me right now. And we hammered out the details on the property purchase. We hope to have that nailed down by the end of this month. I did hear from Allison Delwo yesterday. They had still not received our agreement for the LWCF grant, but they have now, and they are working to put together one agreement for both grants, which they will send out to me and I will sign. And then we can look at scheduling the closing date and getting this all taken care of. I met with Matt and Krista to put together a plan for proceeding on the campground. More on that in the regular agenda. Initial budget work with setting budget targets and having staff work through the initial draft of budget. Again, more on the regular agenda. I did meet with the new director for the North Whidbey Parks and Recreation District. She does seem like a good fit. She seems to be taking the right tact and looking at getting things on track up there and all above board and doing the right things. So that all makes sense, and that's a good fit up there. I will be working remotely next week while I spend the week evaluating the projects. This is the RCO WWRP Local Parks category project that I did the technical review back in June. Everything's been delayed by a few weeks, so that will be next week. I will be at home doing that. Any questions on the staff report?
So you said the lower booster pump. So that's the one that we looked at when we did our walk around kind of behind the dog building there. Is that the one?
Yes, it's in the old pump house above field 3.
Right. Okay.
And that came down to, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, a short, like a wire nut blew out basically, and shorted out completely. Once they redid all the connections, everything seemed to be fine, and it's been running fine since then.
Yes, and I really think when we looked at that before, we talked about that water hammer where that booster pump on and off. Over time, the wire nut inside the connection box actually wore through, and it was a dead short against the metal housing, and it burned the wires up pretty good.
And any other questions on the staff report?
No. All right. If there's no other questions, let's go to the unfinished business.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna pull this up here and turn this over. I moved this to the start of unfinished business. We kind of had talked about this a little bit beforehand, but wanted to have Declan bring this in and present it here to you all so you could see the whole thing and understand. I'll give you a brief overview, and then Declan, when you want me to switch slides, just tell me to switch slides, but I'm going to give you a brief overview really quick, and then I'll turn it over to Declan. So we did meet with Declan and Dave, Jennifer and I, and we talked through this idea. The biggest barrier that we saw to doing it, the best place that we saw with the right kind of topography for this was the Trustland Trails property that is across Highway 525 from the existing parking area. The biggest obstacle we saw and the biggest issue we saw as a group was getting access to actually construct the trails and safe access for riders once the trails were constructed. So we did have another phone conversation involved the county, and I believe that's kind of where Declan and Dave are headed now with their kind of project idea, but I just wanted to bring it back to you guys as kind of more information and say, I think that we should really fully support this action. I think this is a great kind of opportunity for the south end of the island to have something like this, and would be an incredible 8th grade project. So whether it's on our property or on county property, I still think the project has a great merit, and I think we should put our stamp of approval, whatever that means, and if they need additional kind of ideas or thoughts or support that we might be able to give, minimal support. I don't know that we can do anything on county property, but maybe we can help with, getting information out to volunteers or something like that. I think that we do that as an organization. So Declan, Dave, you want to unmute yourselves and take it away? I'm going to minimize this and just say, tell me to switch slides or next or something when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I'm Declan King, and I'm in 8th grade and was going to the Waldorf school here over on Campbell, and but I'm gonna homeschool this year, but I'm still gonna do an 8th grade project. And I was thinking of doing a mountain bike park. And yeah, next. Go to the next slide. We looked at what mountain bike facilities around. Yeah. We looked at different mountain bike places around, and there's really nothing on Whidbey that has jumps and stuff like that. But I think that I could probably build something. And yeah, next. One property we looked at, owned by the county. Yeah, one property we looked at that's owned by the county was her property over by Putney. It's 26 acres and was open for mountain biking, but I think they closed it for something. Go to the next slide. It's on the corner of Lone Lake and one of those small roads in there. It has pretty good terrain. Yeah, it's marked on the county property as a bicycle property. That's what kind of intrigued us about it. It's only 26 acres, but I mean, that's still a decent size. We could probably put a couple of miles of trails in there. We'll get back to this at the end of the presentation, kind of the latest developments. If you go to the next slide, we met with some people from Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance. They're a big, I think they're the biggest statewide mountain bike organization in the country. And if you're familiar with mountain biking, they're kind of famous for developing Doothy Hill, which is out near Issaquah. It's like a destination mountain bike park on 140 acres or something out there, which is what they set out to do. And they built it back in 2010, but it's kind of the benchmark, I think, across the country for a mountain bike park. So that's why we reached out to them. They kind of know what they're doing. Then they built, 80, 90 different facilities, parks across the state. I mean, they got a mountain bike terrain park under I-5 down on East Lake Union. I mean, it's everywhere. They've got something, except for, like we showed back on slide 2, that there's kind of a void there. And they have stuff out on the peninsula, out in the mainland, but nothing on Whidbey or South Whidbey. You remember this we were talking about? We were looking at different mountain bike clubs and stuff like that. There is on Whidbey, and I don't know. Yeah, so one thing that we were going through with the people from Evergreen was just how much mountain biking is growing, and it's something basically across the board to get anybody out. Kids are starting out at 3 years old. It's as low impact or high impact as the rider wants it to be. So the age ranges are really expanding, and there's a lot of diversity in the ridership. Women's groups, children's programs. I mean, it's basically and even here on the island, there's already a number of events. Of course, the mussels in the kettles, and there's a cooking in the kettles, and Voodoo Racing sponsors a bunch of stuff, and then some road bike things. What Evergreen was saying is that there's latent demand, meaning that the only thing preventing more ridership is more places to ride. And so they've been going crazy supporting calls from all the corners of the state to try and fill that demand. We get their information from the statewide comprehensive outdoor research recreation plan. And you guys are probably familiar with that. Like it says there, Duty Hill gets 150,000 visitors a year. And mountain bike sales are 25% of all sales at bike shops. And they project 10% of all Washington residents ride bikes on some kind of soft trail mountain bike type of thing. So we put this together just to say, hey, there's a lot of interest in mountain biking. So although Declan was doing it because he likes mountain biking, we're making the case that it's probably a bigger event or bigger thing there. If you go to the next slide, let's see, that's. And then the local communities really benefit from it. Again, this is from Evergreen's material. There's a lot of, just in the interest of time, I'll jump in for a little while. Declan and I put this together over the weekend. There's a lot of community building and high volunteerism. In fact, we already see that at the Putney Woods with the trail management they have there. Not mountain bikers, but it's kind of that same community involvement idea. Of course, it's a healthy lifestyle. It's something that can be done during this isolation or, social distancing time. We are to get benefits to the economy as well. Evergreen is saying that mountain bikers travel in threes. They spend lots of money on food and refreshments and take 2 to 3 overnight long weekend trips per year to local destinations in general. I think that's also from that statewide comprehensive outdoor research, recreation stuff. There's opportunities, if there was such a park, for outdoor education, like camps and training for young riders. They had a couple of case studies that Oak Ridge and Bend, Oregon are destinations. They have big parks there. Squamish up in BC had they were kind of tracking this and showed a, we wouldn't do something on their scale, but $1.3 million economic impact on resident spend. So they think that only 51% of the demand for mountain bike trails is met at this point. And I think that data there is statewide. So go to the next one. So let's see. So the model that Evergreen typically follows is that they really engage the community. They work with the county to define the timeline. They work with the community to find funding sources and human resources, volunteers. They work through kind of permitting needs and identify all the project barriers that might be needed. And then they help with grants and finding cash and volunteers and all that. They also have an entity that does all the design work for these different parks. And depending on how it's structured, they can either and they hire the service out. So if Declan and I were to get a grant, we could enlist their support. Or what I did is just to kind of find what we're getting into, I had them send me a bunch of the memorandums of agreement and understanding that they've established with Mukilteo, the King County for the Dookie Hill project. There was something they just recently did on the peninsula, Kitsap. So these documents kind of outline all the bits and pieces that have to be worked out as far as who owns the land, what's the liability requirements, who's doing the maintenance. I mean, it basically details all of that. So we've just started working through that. And then we'll probably look to see if there's certain things that we don't think we can handle. And then we'll engage with Evergreen on those type of things. The next slide. Doug, thank you, had set us up with a meeting with the Deputy Administrator on the Public Works for Island County and Joantha Guthrie, and she sounded pretty excited about it on our calls. We started kind of focusing our attention towards potentially using that property we talked about at the top of the presentation, the Hurt property. It is a great location. It's right down the street from a quarter mile down the road from Putney Woods. Looks like pretty good topography that would accommodate different levels of riders. It would be, it kind of be like an extension maybe of what's already there because there's trail riding out there. But this would be kind of focused more on, first of all, dedicated to mountain bikes, because we wouldn't want people going off jumps and racing around and running into horse riders and that sort of thing. So it'd be dedicated to mountain bikers, and then it would have terrain that would accommodate them. Let's see. And then some of the things we have to work out details on is who's doing the maintenance. We have to set up some kind of volunteer entity that would do that long term, and then figure out the funding sources and that sort of thing. I'll tell you, so the reason I was kind of hesitating on that a little bit, so just in prep for this meeting on Monday or Sunday night, I sent Joanne a follow-up email and said, hey, we left the phone call with Doug was on and said, you were going to look into this property, you're going to ask around to see if there's other properties that might be a better fit or, something. So I said, hey, what'd you find out? And she wrote back and said, the county's not interested at all in doing a mountain bike only park. So I haven't written her back yet. But I don't know. I kind of want to bounce that response off you guys and see if you do anything more about that. If that was kind of a thing that the county's like, they want multi-use facilities or, they're just not into mountain biking or just what. Or if I should continue to follow up with her and find out what's going on with that. Anybody
I'm
have
sorry,
any?
David, who was it that gave you that response, just out of curiosity?
That was from Joanne.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I would say, this is Matt. I would say, if you look in the county's parks plan, comprehensive plan from, I can't tell you what year they did it, a couple of years ago. It's a 6-year plan that districts like them and us have to maintain with the state. The last time they did that, Doug probably remembers the dates, but they made a conscious decision to move what they called with their parks, to move from what they called active recreation to passive recreation as like a focus. So, away from soccer fields and baseball fields and more towards trails in general for walking and bird watching and or more passive activities. So from a strategic standpoint, that was a decision they made. And if you can find their comprehensive plan, you can read that. But something that's a trails property, making use of a property that's currently not used, to me seems, and to put trails on it. The only thing I might think is that the way to align with their plan is to make it more trails like Putney Woods trails and less, jumps and obstacles and some of those things that are, you find in a mountain bike specific park. And maybe that's the happy medium, is trails you can ride. Maybe not, wheelie drops off of 20 feet, but they're trails you can ride.
Well, and Dave, just off the top of my head, my gut reaction is it's probably partially related to the passive versus active recreation, but it's probably more related to the idea of inclusive versus exclusive facilities. They're probably not interested in doing any kind of facility that excludes multi-use. So when we're talking about doing a mountain bike type facility that is a mountain bike only because it's designed for it, they're probably not as interested in an exclusive facility. So that would be, I mean, you could certainly talk to Joantha and get feedback as to why, and that wouldn't be a bad question to ask, is why is this not something that you'd be interested in? We're talking about volunteers coming in and constructing this. This is not, we're not looking to ask you for money. We're asking to use public land that is not currently being used. Worth a conversation, and it might even be worth a conversation with our local county commissioner, and just seeing, you know, if there's anything that our county commissioners can bring forward with that. It might do nothing. This is the kind of stuff you run into when you deal with, you know, a governmental entity. We do have a Parks and Recreation plan. We do have things that we adhere to and do that way. So we're a lot more flexible because we're a smaller organization. They're a little less flexible because they've got policies that they're constricted by. So I would suggest talking to Joantha again, and I would suggest even talking to Helen Price Johnson and seeing if she can give you any kind of push to help, or, you know, maybe as Matt suggests, the project gets modified to just be trails. I know that's not what you're looking for. So that may be something that you guys have to decide whether that's worth projecting and going forward on, or whether it's just, okay, well, that's not going to work as the project anymore.
Yeah. Or at least, you know, find out what the constraints are, if it's, you know, what would fit within that, you know.
Declan, I think, first of all, that's fabulous. I believe many times that, you know, a lot of times entities tend to listen to younger people over older people when it comes to doing something like this. And if it's sponsored by a young person who's enthusiastic about it, and I believe there's a lot of support for this. I'm a big fan. I myself have rode these woods just recently with my wife, with my daughter, with a friend of mine more aggressively. So there could not be somebody who's a bigger fan of what you're trying to do. It seems strategy-wise that it might be something where you're doing a branch of, you know, you're using a section of something that is already recreationally inviting for all, but, you know, you still have an opportunity, much like there's a pump track at Park and Rec where kids can do more aggressive type biking. Start small, but, you know, leave yourself an out to grow as enthusiasm builds. It just seems that is a neat way to approach it, rather than just say, oh, we can't do it at all. You know, think about what you can do with that hurt property, which I think sounds really cool. If there's anything I can do in terms of being a conduit, you know, that before Langley Middle School closed, I became a certified cycling instructor. So we had hundreds of kids on bikes, and there's teachers that I know that I work with and kids that are passionate about this. So I can be a conduit for that as you go down this road. Hats off to you. I think it's fabulous.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Yeah.
Anything else, Dave, Declan, that you wanted to bring up here?
No, thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, let me make just one more bit of feedback. Sorry, I was just sitting here writing down notes. I think the idea that it is where you guys found that property relatively co-located with Putney Woods, I think that's a strong incentive for that particular piece of property. I mean, the Hurt property is one that we've kept in our comprehensive plan for at least the last 2 cycles, more than that, probably, because we're aware of it, because it's also there close to that park. And I think you're talking about 150 acres at Duthie Hill. If you're talking about a 26-acre park that's adjacent to, you know, several hundred acres of additional trails, I think that's a much bigger draw than if it's an isolated property somewhere. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, it's almost like the pump track model where you have the trails, then you have the pump track. here you'd have, you know, the trails of Putney, and then you'd have this kind of more aggressive spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like there is no walking trails or horseback riding trails, because there are several hundred acres up the road.
Right. And to me, I think that's actually, Declan, I think that's a good way to put it to the county, because this is, you know, this is a county property, and they look at it, maybe are looking at it in isolation. If you explain the context of, okay, just stand out in the middle of Lone Lake Road, not when there's cars coming, but stand in the middle of Lone Lake Road and look across the street. And if there are people that come there to mountain bike, and there's 3 people in the car or 4 people in the car, and one of them doesn't want a mountain bike because they don't have one, or they got hurt last week or whatever, they can go take a walk in the woods, you know, from the same parking lot.
Yeah, I do, and I do think that Eric's point, I think it was about sometimes coming from a member of the community that's a youth as opposed to an adult, carries a lot more weight. And I think that there is an argument to be made as to what Matt said about the idea that, you know, and Declan, your point is well taken. There's trails there that are multi-use already. You can talk too to the idea that, you know, the walkers and the hikers and the horseback riders do not want a mountain biker coming screaming down over, you know, on a trail up behind them. The idea of having a separate facility is actually a safety kind of thing. It's also a community kind of, you know, making the community happy in general. This will then say, hey, if you're on a mountain bike and you're on these trails, you know, on the general trails, you have to yield to walkers. You have to yield to horse traffic. If you're a mountain biker in the mountain bike facility, you don't have to yield. You're just riding, right? If you're a horseback rider, you can't go in that facility. So I think that there's an argument to be made there, and I think that discussion needs to happen. I don't know that Joantha is going to listen to that, or not. She'll listen to it and she'll accept it. I don't know that she's going to be the one that's going to be able to take action on that. I think it's more going to be at the commissioner level that you're going to have that discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think now that you say that, Doug, you know, I was thinking we were kind of looking to mountain bikers as advocates, you know, to try and get support for this if you know, as we move forward. I'm thinking, you know, maybe we get non-mountain bikers as advocates. Maybe we get the horsemen that maintain that Putney Woods to say, yeah, I constantly get, you know, people telling me about running into mountain bikers. If you could set up a fast-paced mountain bike place, not here, that'd be awesome. You know, that might carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, no, I get you. There, you know, I've got 5 horses on the property, and you do not want a horse getting spooked. It's not safe. So to have the ability to have mountain bikers somewhere else where they can ride and enjoy their recreational activity, and have them have a dedicated space, it's not a bad thing. It's really, the question becomes, what is the reason they wouldn't do an exclusive mountain biking park? Is it simply because it's not in their park and rec plan, or is it they just don't do any active type recreation spaces? So that's, I think, the first question, and then you can try and address it at the higher level with the commissioners. But I still think it's a great idea. I just don't think we have the property that is a good fit for it in a 10 to 12 month period to get this done. So I'm here if you need help. I am happy to put in my 2 cents. Eric's already said the same thing. If there's anything that we can do as an organization to stand up and say, hey, we support this idea, we're happy to do that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Any other comments?
If it's because it's not in the plan, are those plans easily amended, or is that kind of ironclad for the next 8-year cycle or something?
They have a 6-year cycle usually. Yeah. I'm going to mute myself because I got dogs barking. Hold on. I'll let Matt answer.
Yeah, the plans are 6 years in duration. I think theirs is probably coming up to its renewal. And that's when they sit down and the commissioners debate, changes to it, edits to it, philosophical changes like this. And it's not ironclad. It's guidance. It's not a comprehensive document. It just gives them directional guidance. And the county still maintains many parks that have baseball fields and soccer fields. They just say strategically, we'd rather turn those over to somebody else. And when we go to acquire a new property, we're going to look for ones that have passive uses rather than active uses. So they're guidance, not, strict instructions for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments from commissioners on the presentation, on the project? Everybody's good?
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dave.
Declan.
Thank you, Declan. I think it's a great idea. And like I said, if we can help out, please let us know.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right.
Doug, you're still muted.
I'm not talking.
Okay. So let's move on. Campground phase 1 update.
Okay, so let me minimize this so I can. All right, so campground. Matt, Krista, and I met and we discussed next steps. Tom, it says here, Tom is going to be going out to mark the individual campsite locations, and then I will map them. We have gone out and marked the individual campsite locations on that first loop of sites. So if you're out in the park, once the smoke has cleared, walking around, please feel free to walk through there and tromp through that road loop, and take a look. They're marked with a stake. Hold on a second. Shh. Okay. Yeah. Apparently my wife is coming home, so now all the dogs are going to bark. So we did do that. I am going to get the county's GPS unit, and I'm going to get them labeled on a map. 1 second. Knock it off! I'm going to have to kick them all outside in a bit. Okay. I'm going to label those, upload those to the county map system. I'm going to share that with J.A. Brennan, and we're going to create a final map to show clearing and grading, how much is going to be taken out. Tom has also gone through and kind of marked all of the potential trees within campsites and on the initial loop road, not the road up to the loop. But the trees that would have to be moved are removed are only at this point 28 trees, and a lot of those, I don't know what percentage, but a good percentage of those are alder trees that are actually leaning over the campsites. They're mature alders, so we would want to get rid of those anyways. So once we do all of that, we're going to resubmit this to the county for a final approval on site plan review. Any questions on that?
A lot of the trees, besides alder, are hemlock, which are very shallow rooted up there. And a lot of them are growing out of stumps and have damage at the base from previous logging as well.
Anything else on that? Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right.
A question related to what Tom just brought up about the hemlocks. Would we be prevented by the county for removing any of those?
The trees that I marked are the ones that are basically just to give us enough clearance on the loop road, and then inside the individual campsites to give us enough space for the RVs and the vehicles to actually park. So I still recommend that we hire that outside firm we talked about a couple years ago and have a tree assessment done around each campsite, because there may be more damaged trees that are going to need to come down. This is just the initial to get the footprint we're looking at. These ones specifically would need to be taken out.
Right, and I think Krista, to your question, I don't think there would be any objection to the county. The county is just looking for a number of trees that we're going to have to remove. They're not sitting there and going to say, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. They just need to know. We have to provide a report of how many trees we're taking out. I don't even know if they care what type. They just want to know the actual number.
Okay, so we're not dealing with a minimum or a maximum or some ratio or something like that. They just want a plan.
Correct. Exactly. Okay. Any other questions on campground? Okay. Waterman property. Jennifer and Josh and I, well, first Jennifer and I met and looked at comparables, trying to get through the go 10% over the appraisal. We found some potential properties. I submitted them to the RCO and they said, well, why don't you submit them to the appraiser? And because that's an easier way to do it. It doesn't have to go through our process. So we submitted them to the appraiser. The appraiser did get back to me and basically said, those all have water views or mountain views and are not actual comparable properties. So we then went and sat down with Josh, Jennifer and I sat down with Deborah Waterman and Jason from their office, and we're looking at a total purchase price of $570,000 for the property, which is the $590 minus the $20,000. Jennifer, Joe Marcelino, and Windermere are generously donating their time to write up the paperwork. We've agreed with them to split any title fees, escrow fees, etc., with the Waterman family and the sellers 50-50. Jennifer is writing up that purchase and sale agreement, and when we have the LWCF agreement finalized, we can proceed with scheduling a closing date. Contacted the RCO. They had not received that agreement yet when I contacted them. However, they have now received it, and they are now working to combine our WWRP local parks and the LWCF agreement into one agreement, which we can then, once I sign off on, go through the process of setting up a closing date and moving forward. So that's where we currently are. I have also, once I get an actual closing date, I can get the official cost from the county to remove those properties from the forestry program. We can do it all at once. And then once we have finished the purchase and got all the monies in and everything's done, we can then pay back that portion of the bond issue that we are not using for this purpose. So that's kind of where we are there. We're really close. Now that the Recreation Conservation Office has the LWCF agreement, we should be moving forward and things should fall into place fairly quickly now. Are there any questions on that?
Could you just remind us of now what's the difference between what the grant is going to cover and basically the difference between the grant and the new purchase price?
So we're talking about a $65,000 difference, if I remember right. So we had an initial appraisal at $590,000. The bond issue that we did when we were successful on it, that kicked the Waterman LLC, the parents or the children, not the grandchildren, said they would give us a $20,000 credit if we had a successful bond issue. So that knocked us down to $570,000. The actual appraisal that just happened came in at $505,000. So we can have, we are going to have to pay about $65,000 more than we would have to get to $70,000. So what we're looking at is we'll get 45% from each grant for the property purchase specifically of the $505,000, and then we have to kick in 10% plus anything else over that we agree to pay over the $505,000. Does that make sense? So that's about $65,000 more than what we would have spent.
Gotcha.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Did Jason get that information to you? Remember we had the discussion about
yes.
how we can't wrap our heads around the Okay.
Yes. So one of the things that did come up in our conversation with the Waterman group was the idea that the reason that the value was lower was that the timber values were lower. Looking at that now, lumber is actually higher than what it was. So what our argument might be, and the good news is we can go back. We don't have to. I've been told by the RCO and our grants manager, Allison Delwo, that we can purchase the property and retroactively apply for going up and above 10% over. So what I'm doing right now is first off, I was getting ready for the board meeting tonight and had a couple other things on my plate, but I do want to go back and look at the pricing of the lumber and where it is and how that timber price is going to be where it is now comparison to where we got the appraisal. And that might be our argument for saying, okay, look, this is why we should be able to go 10% over the appraisal price. And that I have gotten some numbers from him. I haven't had a chance to dive into them yet.
Thank you for reminding me that we can do that retroactively. That
Yes,
had slipped my mind.
it is retroactively available to us. We can do that after the fact if we so choose. So and it is not, it's not off my desk. There's just, my desk is a mess. So it's right there. It just, I haven't quite gotten back around to it to analyze those numbers and plug them in. Any other questions on that?
I just would say thanks to Josh and Jen for all the heavy lifting there. This is, I know this is not easy, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just, I'm not patting myself on the back because it was not ultimately my decision, but I am incredibly thankful to Windermere ownership, Joe Massolino, for agreeing that we would write this up. So, and
well,
saving
I think that once we have this project completed, I would like to have the board send a thank you letter to Joe Massolino and Windermere for donating their time there. I think that that's something that we should do. Definitely, and potentially even write that as a letter to the editor, thanking them, you know, community-wide. I think that would be an appropriate thing to do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, I know, Matt, you had said you wanted to talk a little bit about the aquatic facility in here.
Yeah, just quickly, just to follow up on, you know, we all approved the MOU between us and the foundation to formalize the committee to move forward with the, you know, the initial concept and the planning for the aquatic center that's in the comp plan. Just a couple of notes to follow up. We talked about when whatever it was a couple months ago during the grant cycle, the RCO grant cycle, that it was too premature to go into the state grant cycle based on the fact that it was just the very beginnings of the project. And when we, you know, we all kind of got all level on the same page with that. You know, the RCO grants are more suited towards the end of the project or a project when you're ready to put a shovel in the ground. And this project, to try to get through some of the initial phases, you know, there's not a good public grant source to do that. So what the foundation's been doing is investigating private grant sources, and they've just applied for 2 private grants, one through the Whidbey Community Foundation and one through a national organization called the Sunderland Foundation, asking for around $60,000 to fund the feasibility analysis for the facility. So they went off and asked for that I would expect they would get some answers on that sometime in the next couple of weeks. So there may be some money available to investigate this, the feasibility of doing this. And as part of that, part of the grant process, the foundation went out to solicit letters of support. When you supply, just like an RCO grant, you know, the package is stronger if you have letters of support from stakeholders. And I know that they got letters of support from the school district, signed a letter saying that they support the project, a letter from the Senior Services of Island County. They got a letter from Helen Price Johnson saying she supports the project. They got a letter from the soccer club, and they got a letter from a private PT provider on the south end, all of them saying that they support or strongly support the project. And those all went into these grant applications. So for future grant applications, as we're talking about maybe an RCO grant or something like that, this set of stakeholder documents exists now. So the only other thing I wanted to say is that, Eric and I are the two commissioners on this particular project. So I spent some time with Eric in the last week and a half, updating him on the work that the foundation's been doing. And we're going to meet with Doug Friday?
Tomorrow at 2.
Tomorrow. Because we had the other thing that had been incorporated as part of that MOU, remember, we changed the MOU to say we wanted to have the staff offices for the park in this building. So the building design was updated to do that, and that's what we'll share with Doug tomorrow. If he hasn't already seen that, he may have already seen that from Arnie or somebody. But anyway, we'll talk through that. And then we'll do a more bigger update to the board and put us on the agenda, Doug, for next meeting to show what the concept plan is and where it fits on the property right there at the entrance to Maxwell, and then all that sort of stuff. So that's my update.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? Okay.
No questions. Move on to the group use of district facilities.
Okay, so this is this is the other one we kind of started doing as a monthly kind of update for, specifically during our current scenario. So I did want to update everybody. We did have the County Board of Health institute a waiver process for playing of games to their 10-person maximum for outdoor recreation. We were successful in our application for that. We've also been for our adult softball league, and more recently for a joint Zumba program that we are now doing in the park. We are now seeing, the other thing that we're seeing is some picnic shelter reservations that are telling us that they're for 10 people and end up all of a sudden they show up and they're for 50. So if this continues, what we will have to do is stop accepting reservation requests for casual events like that. And I don't want to do that, but I don't see any other way. If people are going to blatantly lie to us and say, oh, we're going to have 10 people, I don't see another way to deal with that. So what I would do is I would just suspend any further reservations. And we are getting into the months where we're not going to have picnic shelter reservations much going forward. It may be a little longer this year with the kind of indoor restrictions that are in place, but we don't want to have large groups coming in, and we'll just stop accepting the reservation requests if that continues. So we also have received requests for use of the sports fields by South Whitby High School girls soccer practices. Currently there is no sport season underway, and I'm told by the high school AD that we also might get a boys soccer team practice request. What is going on is beginning, and Tom just got an email on this as the baseball head coach, beginning I believe September 28th and going through November 30th, WIAA is planning to allow an out-of-season practice allowance for all sports teams for the fall, since all team sports are on hold for next year for the moment. I did ask Paul if the school teams could use their own fields to kind of spread things out, not have everybody on the same fields. His response was that fields have not been maintained and are not in a state of readiness for practices. I have added the girls' practices. It's once a week on Monday nights to our schedule. But I also think that this might be a good time for us to revisit, and that I'm not doing that tonight. I'm just kind of saying that we might want to revisit our facility use policy and discuss something that came up in one of my directors' meeting, the idea of a priority season for all groups that they are not charged for usage, and then other times of the year they would be charged. It's a concept that's in place in a lot of other municipalities, and from our reasoning on not charging, it makes good sense. What we say in our reasoning, for the state auditor and for not being gift of public funds when we're allowing teams to use our fields for free is that this is an activity that, as a recreation organization for youth soccer, youth baseball, youth ultimate frisbee, if they were not an organization that was doing it, we would have to be providing that. The argument would be that we wouldn't provide right now a fall season if we were on hold and couldn't have it. What we would do is we might do a modification of that. We would provide a season for example, baseball in the spring into summer, and then maybe a fall season would be paid, or maybe there would be a shortened fall season that was not paid. But any kind of usage outside of that by baseball would be paid. If we did a soccer season, we would do a soccer season potentially in the spring and then in the fall. We could say that one of those is priority. We could say that both of those are priority, but that anything outside of that priority season would be charged. So those are just some ideas and some thoughts. The other thing that I wanted to just kind of bring to everybody's attention, is the idea that these sports user groups are a big impact on our budget. One of the reasons that we're seeing, we've seen, and Tom can correct me on the number, I think it was about a $10,000 decrease in the amount that we're spending on field maintenance in the summer, getting the fields ready again for the fall. And this is due to us not having a spring season, allowing the fields to rest, not having as many people out on them throughout the summer. And so that impact is there. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that maintenance or that they shouldn't be out there. What I'm saying is perhaps there should be a usage fee associated with that. And that's something that we could discuss at a board level. So that's kind of what, I just wanted to bring to your attention. It's not up for a policy review at this point, but my suggestion would be that we look at that for future and decide what we truly want to do.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick from my standpoint, and basically everything's shut down since March, and by the end of the year, I really do anticipate probably saving about $10,000 by not having spring and early summer season, and it's mainly on the soccer fields. So, I'd like to address this policy before the end of the year, because we're going to have requests from the girls soccer team that's going to start up in, when is that? January?
I think it's February. But I'm not sure.
Yeah. So the high school girls soccer season has been moved from fall to late winter. And so they're going to be putting in a request to use our fields, and we generally are shut down at that time of year. So before we get to that point, I think we need to address this policy and really have the school district start looking at their own facility first, and ours as a backup. I drove by the stadium today. The stadium is completely usable. It's been untouched since February, and there's no reason the school can't be over there on their facility practicing. So, it's kind of an ongoing thing. I know we've got 3 new commissioners. This is constantly brought up by me because, I don't see why we should take all the wear, and they just say, well, we can't maintain our own facility. I just don't think that's right. We don't do that to them. That's my 2 cents.
I have a major issue with that as well, being an employee and somebody who values those fields and facilities. I don't know how the school district can come out and say, sorry, we can't support our own facilities, but we'd like to use yours. I just have a really hard time with that. So as a taxpayer, as an educator, as someone who's vested in this, I'm very upset by the fact that the district is not taking responsibility for the facilities.
Matt, I'm not hearing you. You're muted.
Sorry. Historically, we had an MOU between the Parks District and the school district for co-utilization of facilities or for utilization of facilities that said school district wanted to use our facilities they could do so. And when we wanted to use school district facilities, gymnasiums primarily, we could do so. And that was in place and working for many years without, I mean, as Tom pointed out, we had pressure points, obviously, because, you know, big kids, you know, playing soccer on the fields when they're wet, muddy, you know, causes damage, and we have to recover from that sort of thing. We make messes in the gyms and we clean up from them generally, but they complain about it. So, but that was moving along undisturbed until the middle school reorientation happened, and they started running the middle school as a profit center last year. And as part of that, started charging us for use of middle school gyms for dodgeball and for basketball, and whatever else we're using them for. And we went to the school board and had a joint meeting to ask them for relief from that in order to comply with the MOU. And they denied that at that time. Since then, that board has turned over significantly. So to me, I think my personal opinion, the appropriate thing to do would be to go back to the board, the new board, with, you know, our board for some kind of a joint meeting like that, to say, we don't think that this is the best idea. And we think the MOU, and my opinion, the MOU is the best idea, because think about it, as a taxpayer, you're paying taxes for the parks, you're paying taxes for the school, and now these two organizations are spending our tax dollars back and forth between them, rather than applying them to the schools or to the parks. So anyway, I think to me that's the most appropriate, is to sit down with them and say, hey, you guys are the new board. We think you should reconsider this proposal and go back to the MOU that we've had and was successful. Again, with the pressure points, obviously, but was successful largely for decades. Anyway, here's my thought.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Hearing none. So what?
So no, hang on, Doug.
Go ahead.
So
Jennifer.
is that the creation of another committee? Are we just looking for a couple of volunteers to spearhead that? How do we proceed? Because we do have. Thanks for driving it home, Matt. That it's trading taxpayer dollars, and my gosh, if the public gets a hold of that, we're all going to.
Well, and this was publicized in at least one article in the Record. I have to go back and see it, but they were at one of the meetings where we talked about this openly. The fact that we were being charged, that we did not think it was the right thing to do for the school. So I think this has at least been publicized one time, maybe more than once in the Record. So yeah. I think, and you were saying, Doug, about the committee.
Yeah, so we do have an interlocal committee, and I believe I'd have to double check who was on it. I believe Eric was one of them, but I'm not positive on that. So let me go back and double check who that is, and then we can potentially set up a meeting on that, because I believe there were two commissioners on that. I could reach out, and we could reach out to kind of sit down and talk this through. But I think our ongoing frustration as staff is, and I think Tom put it pretty well, is we're sitting here and we're maintaining our fields and we're doing what we're supposed to do to maintain our facilities. We've got our fields, and we don't call them up and go, can we use your softball field when we've got a perfectly good softball field for our softball league? We call them up for things that we don't have. And I think that's where we get into frustration, is they have fields, they're choosing to not spend the money to maintain them or reallocating those funds. Their priority is education. I get it. I completely understand their priority is education. But by the same token, they have these teams. They have these sports groups. The cross country team runs through the park. Hey, that's great. The soccer team wants to use the fields. That's awesome if you don't have a space you can use. In my mind, we should be using our own spaces first. If those, because of usage, because of something else, become unavailable, or they sell properties or something like that, then hey, if they didn't have it, I'd have no problem with it. But they do have it. They don't have a golf course, so they go and use Useless Bay, I think, for the golf team. Hey, I get that. That makes perfectly good sense. This is what I'm looking at. It's we don't sit here and go, well, if we built a gym for our use, I would not go to them first to use their gyms, the school district gyms, without using ours. We have a gym. That would be my first go-to. Once that's booked, if we book that up for our program and we've got basketball league going on and we need more space, then I would go and use their gyms. We should be using our facilities first.
To be clear, is when that term education is thrown around, physical education is part of that education.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big part of that education, and I'm a diehard advocate of where we're at, where we've come. And prior to this whole COVID thing, I was scheduled to go and do a presentation, and I'm laying it out there. I have a vested interest in this, in terms of saying this is where we're at. Here's where we were, and now. Fast forward, we're at minimal facilities, minimal participation. It's absolutely horrid compared to where we were years ago. And that's been left to rot. And I'm laying the cards on the table. Unfortunately, COVID hit. I want to do this inside. I want to deal with board members there. I want everybody. And as you said, there's a change of guard. I think there's going to be a little bit more, hopefully, open, dialogue and readiness to move forward, as opposed to we've just taken leaps and bounds backwards. So I throw that out there just so you know that that's in the works. I'm waiting until we can have an actual board meeting publicly, not on Zoom.
So my 2 cents would be is that if we want to start at that interlocal committee meeting level, I will touch base with Eric and whoever else is on that committee when I get into the office and try and set something up to kind of go with and sit down on a less formal basis with a bit of their group and go, this is what we're seeing coming down the pike with, COVID this winter. We can't accommodate in February a full soccer season on our fields. They're going to be destroyed and we won't have them for the soccer season in March. And that's just it, is they're going to want a girls soccer season in February and March, and then a boys soccer season in April and May. And that's going to be hard to accommodate. So we're going to have to start that conversation. And I think this is a good time to do that. So I will reach out and we'll start with the interlocal committee and then work towards having a joint board meeting. Questions, concerns, thoughts?
I would just say one last point about that. I think that the idea of the interlocal committee, I think, is great, because when we went to the full board, like as a first step, it was clear that that's not the most conducive environment to like reaching consensus and having an open discussion and exchange of ideas. They just were basically saying, talk to the hand. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea of doing it in a smaller group is a great idea. And I think, just as a general point, we've talked about this with some of these other, the seasons, those pressure points on our fields, like March and like October, November, where we do have a field in the local area that drains extremely well. And that's the field behind the elementary school or intermediate school. But that field has fallen into such a state of disrepair over the years that it's not super playable without risk of injury. So to me, all those, if you have a good, thriving agreement between two entities like the school district and us, when our fields are unplayable, we put not just school users on that intermediate school field, we put other users on that intermediate school field because it's safe and it's dry and it recovers quickly, or it doesn't get damaged as easily or whatever. And so I think it's that kind of an agreement that kind of a relationship that we need to cultivate, because, we're all in this together, right? It's a small island. We don't need to be like butting heads with each other at every turn.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Capital projects plan review. So I did get comments back from, or prioritizations back from most of the commissioners. I did not receive one from Jennifer. What I did was I took the everybody's rankings and then averaged them out so that we'll have an average ranking based on the 4. I'm going to minimize this here so everybody can see it. So these are the projects. This is everybody's individual ranking. Some people didn't rank certain things because they were like pavement overlays. They were basically, looked at as that's everything that's a subcategory, the skate park area improvements, etc. So some things are going to go up and down based on where they are. So what I figured I would do is just kind of go through, select all of this. There. And I did a ranking as well, just to kind of give staff's 2 cents on it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort it. Custom sort by the average ranking. And then we can kind of see what everybody, what the highest priority versus lowest priority projects were. So based on the rankings we had from commissioners, highest priority was the vehicle lift, then the booster pump upgrades in community park, and then the support pole replacement for the restrooms. Then, which tied with skate park area improvements. After that, you can see it's pretty. Everybody kind of ranked it differently, but those first 3 projects are ones. The booster pump upgrade at community park. That could be part of the actual campground development, so it may not be, a necessity that we have to do. But what this does is this gives us as staff a priority to go in and go, okay, if we have a 5,000 available at the end of this year and we can purchase a lift and put it in M&O, we can bring that to the board for approval. If that money is available. I had some questions from people about, well, if we don't have enough money to do anything, how are we going to do anything? And that's a really good question, but this then gives us the opportunity to go, okay, we got a target of opportunity. We have X amount of dollars left at the end of the summer or end of the season, end of the year, end of the budget cycle. We can put it towards this and do this, and that's up to the board to finalize and approve. So this just kind of gives us a ranking. And that's kind of what this was all for. It was mostly for the M&O stuff. The other stuff, the sports turf field, the campground stuff is really not going to happen with M&O. So, all honesty, probably should have taken those out before we even ranked them. So that's kind of where we are with that. I just kind of wanted to give you an update and have everybody see where everything was. Are there any questions, any thoughts on this?
Just some comments. I found this to be an extremely difficult project to do, namely because of all of the line items. Mm-hmm. So it would have been really helpful if the ones that would not have been from M&O were not included.
Yep.
That would have made such a huge difference and probably would have cut the time that I spent saying to myself, well, what's the reality here? Like, this is really kind of different scope, but okay, I need to rank it. So, I think that there's got to be a little better way of doing this or making it a little bit more accessible for us.
Okay.
I'm glad that we're doing an average ranking. That's helpful. Mm-hmm. But I just kind of came away with this as there's got to be a better way.
Okay. I'll revise and for the next cycle, I'll have this a little bit clearer.
Yeah, I had a really hard time prioritizing it, which is why you kind of got something back from me that was color coded rather than numbered, and that I expressed that it seemed that we should be taking care of deferred maintenance issues. I'm glad to see that the top 3 that came back were indeed on the top of my list as well. So,
okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, much I was more philosophical about the knowing that where we're at in this time, and supporting Tom and maintenance and in terms of things that we can actually get done in this time. That's how I approached it. Represented there.
Well, I think everyone's comments are completely and utterly clear and fair. And yes, we should have taken out the stuff that is not going to happen within MNO. So that's something that I will keep in mind, and we'll update for the next cycle when we go through this next year. And we shouldn't have that issue again. So it should be a little bit easier next time around. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I mean, this list is kind of an ongoing list. It's kind of my wish list. And if I don't put it in front of the board, especially with 3 new members, it's just, it's not going to be known. It would have been nice to have a walk around with all of us where we could, kind of tour together and answer questions as we're standing in front of different things. Some of these things are, it's going to take a bunch to do. And we realize that, but we still want to identify and have it on a list somewhere. And it just if it's just on a lower page deferred list, it is just never brought up or thought about. So, with a new board, I wanted to do kind of a thorough walkthrough and just look at a lot of different things with you guys. And so that's kind of how this came about again.
Yeah, I think my two cents on that.
That was really informative, and I just think it's incredible the amount of the pride you take in the work and the employees. I just think the parks look absolutely fabulous, and I want to say that publicly. So the support that I'm throwing out there. We talked about little things, not little things, but maybe some of those smaller items like sealant on some of the beams, supportive beams and structures. That stuff to me seems like pertinent and doable in the fiscal times we're in. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I'll definitely let the guys know. And we've heard that more this year than in past. And I think it's just the people that appreciate having a safe place out in nature. So thank you.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to probably do next year is if we do have items that are bond issue size or grants going to be required or something like that, I'm going to have a separate list for those, so they'll be in front of you, but they won't be ranked as part of the M&O capital project ranking. So you'll see them, but there'll be a separated out list. Like, here's the items that we would target if we were going to do something like that. Here's the M&O capital kind of project list. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm seeing nodding heads. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
All right.
All right. I would just say, can you hear me, Doug?
Yep.
I would just say, like to Tom's point about making sure these things are on the radar. Where these all exist, almost all of them on the list and more are in the comp plan. And I think we do our annual budgeting process, I think to me, and we talk about deferred maintenance items in there a little bit, but I think that would be the time that we should work on a process to do that on at least the annual basis, where we, as part of the budget planning, say, what are these deferred items from past years? Where do they fit? And then what are the other big ticket items that are associated with the comp plan programs, so that we have a clear picture going into the next budget year when and if we can fit those things in, and where we are going to have to go do something else like a bond measure or something like that.
Okay. Sounds good. Anything else on that? Okay. All right. Moving on.
Let's move on to new business.
Okay, so I have been approached by Josh and Jennifer, who are Clinton Community Council reps, about the Clinton Community Council and whether or not it is our input is necessary. And I wanted them kind of talk about it, and I didn't want to prejudice or preface anything here. So I think what they're looking at is the meetings are long and really don't kind of apply most of the time to parks. So go ahead, guys.
Yeah, so just, I've been to a couple of these meetings. And the most involvement I've had in any discussion is in the very first one, which was in person. Every other one of them have kind of just been over Zoom like this. And I don't think I've been addressed once, asked any questions or really had to say anything. So that's just been my experience with it. I think that if they have something, pertaining to the parks or they can just kind of reach out to us, and then maybe we can, plan on going to the meeting and discussing it. But they haven't really mentioned anything about recreation or anything like that so far. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and in the two meetings I've been to, there was, actually I did one on Zoom, but anyway, there was just a little bit of conversation about the one park, and it was just kind of over maintenance, but it was very lightly touched on, and likewise was never asked for any comment or anything. And it seems now that they are very focused on the business corridor and trying to figure out how to get Clinton to be a stopping place instead of just a pass through, and rightfully so. And so I think Josh has an excellent suggestion. If they have something they want us to address, they could reach out to us and then we could participate accordingly. But
Okay, so
I don't feel that we're giving anything of benefit, nor is it a good use of time.
yeah, I've attended a few of those meetings, and I think that the first meeting I attended, they wanted to have us take over Dan Porter Park immediately, and would definitely lobby for us to do that. And we've talked about that a little bit with all of you, so I don't really have to rehash that here, but. My thought would be that maybe I just draft up a letter from me saying that, our board members, while they, value our connection with Clinton, are happy to attend when you have something pertaining to parks that we can put our input into. Otherwise, if you need us there for something, we're happy to come and be participants. Unless there is something that is specific to parks or to the park district, feel free to contact us if you need us, and kind of leave it at that. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Anybody have a concern with that? Okay.
Have we, just a random question, Doug, have we ever gotten a letter of support from them for something like a bond measure, not a bond measure, but a grant request, like for the campground to do, we go to lots of stakeholders. Have we ever gone to them?
You know what? I don't actually recall if we got one for them for the campground. I'd have to look in my record to find that for sure. I think we might have gotten one on the campground on the initial go around. But as to the rest of they tend to be either really organized, or then they're not organized at all, and then they're really organized, and then they're not organized at all. So it kind of goes in waves. I think we might have gotten one from them, but that might have also been the Clinton Chamber of Commerce. As well, so I'm not positive. I will double check that though.
Okay, I was just thinking that one of the things we could go back to them for once a year, twice a year, is to get them to sign a letter for whatever project that we're moving forward with as a measure of support that we can put in a grant packet.
Okay. Well, that could be a meeting where we request to attend and present that to them.
Yeah, something like that. Or once we've got, it sounds like you guys already have the relationships with the key people on the council, that now we just communicate with them, electronically, by phone, whatever.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that? Okay.
Well, this is somewhat related, but if you're on that, if you're now relieved from that, I'd sure like to have Josh as part of that interlocal committee talking with the school district about usage. I say that because Josh has kids in the district. He has a lot of experience with the different organizations. So for what it's worth, Josh, I'd appreciate it if you were interested in that, jumping on board.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be a part of it.
Okay, so let me look and see who is actually on that, because we might have 2 people assigned to it already. But
Yeah, Jennifer and Eric.
Jennifer and Eric, okay. All right.
I'm good with whatever you guys want to do, however you want to do it. Yeah.
So maybe we'll just have Josh be a backup for that, and Eric and Jennifer can start, and if Jennifer or Eric can't make it, Josh can step in. All right. Okay. Next item, interlocal agreement. So we have been approached by Useless Bay Country Club, and this is something we have not done. We were approached a while back by Holmes Harbor Golf Course, but what they are looking for is we have our wonderful aerator that aerates incredibly well, and they would love to be able to use that. They have a boom mower that we would
Top dresser this time.
What's that?
It's the top dresser this time was the request.
Top dresser? Okay, so
yes.
They'd love to use our top dresser. I thought it was our aerator. They would have a boom mower that we could use. I have reached out to both MRSC on this to ask what's the legality of it. Can we do it? Can we not do it? They expressed a few concerns, but said, yeah, you can do it. You just have to have a justification for why, because you don't want every single golf course coming up to you and saying, hey, can we do this? If there's not something in it for us, on the flip side, like we're getting to use a piece of equipment, and then they said to check with our insurance provider on insurance requirements. Well, I've got all of that put together. My kind of discussion item tonight was really to come in and go, is this something that you guys think is a good idea? Should we move forward on it? Endurus has given us the go-ahead. The one couple of things that MRSC had said, we should make some findings about whether the value of exchange in use is roughly equivalent. So, and it doesn't have to go down to the penny, but if we're getting a benefit from using their equipment and they're getting a benefit from using our equipment, and we're both using them about the same amount, then it makes sense. If they're getting to use our equipment, but we're only getting to use theirs like once in a blue moon, and it's not equivalent, then it doesn't make sense. So basically the only other concern they had was that we'd be providing a competitive advantage to our private partner that other clubs might want. So that's the concern that kind of bothered me a little bit, but the other questions we can all hammer out. Does the equipment come with an operator? We had said no. We would do the training individually, but all the staff over there would be trained in the use of our equipment, and we would be trained in the use of theirs, so it shouldn't be an issue. We've talked with Endurus about our coverage and their coverage, and I've gotten the recommendations from them. And all of that, all of these little items could be worked into the agreement. So I'm not really concerned about anything significant here. Does anybody have any questions, concerns that, or objections to us kind of proceeding and bringing in it wouldn't be an interlocal because they're not like a local entity, but it might be an MOU or something like that together for this kind of shared equipment use?
I'd reiterate my small island comment. I mean, if I'm a taxpayer and we got a boom mower and the Useless Bay's got a boom mower and the school district got the boom mower and everybody's got a boom mower and we all use them, twice a month, I'd rather us not buy one. I'd rather us work out a deal to use one.
Okay.
So I support it.
Yeah. In terms of the competition, who would potentially be competition for them that would make this unfair?
You could say Holmes Harbor Golf Course would be competition, but it's not the same level of golf course. It is not. The Holmes Harbor is an executive length. It's a shorter length golf course. It is not a competition length. They are not the Useless Bay is a private club versus them. And then the flip side of that is Holmes Harbor doesn't have the equipment. Like when they approached us about using parts of our equipment, they had nothing we wanted to use. So there really was no benefit there. So we have reasoning why we wouldn't be doing it with them, and I don't think we're giving I don't think by allowing them to use, that piece of equipment, we're giving them a huge competitive advantage.
Right, but you could say to Holmes, if Holmes Harbor came knocking on the door again, you could say to Holmes Harbor, yeah, we'll do that in trade for something else that does have value. For example, we want to run a youth golf program over the next 3 years, and we want to bring 20 kids 20 different times to your property, and we want to do it at no charge to the parks
Potentially.
or something.
There could be something else of value that was exchanged, yeah, and that would be something that we would have to work out and make sure that our insurance coverage and MRSC both agreed to it. But yeah, I mean, there's other options that we could do, but the shared equipment usage is very clean and very simple way to do it, so it's not as hard to quantify. Any other?
I'm just saying, you don't slam the door. You just don't slam the door on Holmes Harbor or anybody else.
No, we would talk. We would have the same conversation with Holmes Harbor if they came to us, and we would bring it to the board for further discussion. And if there was something that we could make work out, I would be open to it.
Yeah, I'm good.
Is there going to be like any limit to how often things can be used, or certain time? Is it all open to all of our equipment and all of their equipment?
We're gonna keep it to the two pieces of equipment we're talking about, and not open it up to anything else. Would be my initial thought. And both those pieces of equipment, in my writing of this or in my interpretation of what I'm planning, would be that the owner of the equipment has first usage, period. So if we're using the spreader and they want to use it on a given day, they have to wait till we're done with it, and then they can use it. It is not, and the vice versa for the boom mower. If we wanted to use the boom mower and they were in the midst of doing a bunch of mowing with the boom mower, they have the ability, that's their piece of equipment, they have the right to say no.
I think if we're looking at moving forward, I think Blaine, who's the superintendent up there, and I would probably get together and look at all pieces of equipment that would be, mutually beneficial. I know he talked about they've got a new trencher unit with a conveyor, so it makes a clean ditch and removes the material. I mean, that would be another piece of equipment we might, be interested in looking at. They may be interested in looking at our excavator. So, I mean, I think if we come up with a list of, cross uses, and bring that back, that'd probably be the way to go.
But again, like I said, it would be up to the entity that owns the equipment, would have first right to use that equipment. This agreement would be secondary to that.
And I saw in that email there was a note about including a dispute resolution clause in the contract for that kind of reason. So,
Any other concerns before I go and take it back and sit down with Tom and Blaine and start hammering it out? Okay, sounds good. Hopefully we'll bring that back pretty quickly for you. Next, so I wanted to bring this back. Everybody knows that we manage the WDFW lake sites. I've been approached. Those have expired. The WDFW would like to talk to us about continuing the maintenance of the lakes. This would be the Lone Lake access, the Goss Lake access, and the Deer Lake access through September of 2028. This is taking the existing agreement and just extending it. So impact of these agreements on us is really mostly staff time. And Tom can talk to how much staff time that takes a little bit better than I can, but we have a $500 line item. We have now limited our budget and are basically telling them they need to provide us with as many supplies as they can. If there is a bigger repair, we defer it and send it to them for fixing. They are the lead on any grants that we're doing on those access areas, because they are the ones that have their own grant category and are not competing with us for grant dollars in their own grant category. So all this really is us going in and mowing and cleaning and, you know, picking up the trash. Staff time is our biggest expense on this, but I did want to bring, you know, I have to bring this to you because I'm not going to renew for another 8 years an agreement without bringing it to the board. We have 3 agreements that would extend all of them for 8 more years.
Yeah, I had a question on this. So I went and looked back at the original from 2013 agreement, and I guess I didn't realize that it was at the park's expense. I mean, is there more of a community benefit to have the parks handling it as opposed to, you know, Fish and Wildlife doing it themselves? Is there more of a benefit for the community with the parks doing it?
The issue is one of proximity. They do not have staff located on the island, so they have a manager. They have one manager that's assigned to each of these. They don't have a maintenance staff that comes around here to clean those 3 to keep those up. These were initially under the county area of responsibility, and back in 2008, 2009, when things went south, we took them on as a district to kind of maintain them and keep them open to the public. They are more of a passive recreation site. But again, we expend, I think we have a line item for $500 in the budget now. And then we have staff time. And Tom, you want to detail out how much time you guys go down there?
Yeah, we try and get to the lakes between 2 and 4 times a week. It, kind of depends on the time of year. When it's extremely hot, we have to be down at Deer Lake almost daily. There's so much garbage, so much drinking, drugging down there. So it just kind of, it's quite a bit less in the wintertime. But again, probably an average of 3 days a week we're going to the lakes. With COVID, we've been trying to spray them out twice a week. In my opinion, they should be locked because there's no running water. They're vault toilets and they're absolutely gross. And there's really nothing we can do about that. We're talking about toilet paper, garbage removal, staff time, and gas. We spend a lot of fuel running around to the 3 lakes. So, when we took these things on, our budget was in a pretty healthy state, and we're kind of doing the bare minimum that that they need. But it is frustrating working with an outside agency that owns them. We had a problem with one of the docks. Reported it, and it's months and months and months of getting any response from Fish and Wildlife to take care of their property. Another problem we have is at Goss Lake, we have 2 dead trees that I've reported for the last 2 years, and they said they were going to come take them out. They've never taken them out. There's just not a lot of, it's their property. There are things that they should be doing that I understand they're spread thin, but it reflects poorly on us. And I'm the one that gets the complaints. So I don't like getting complaints. So that's my frustration with the whole agreement, is it's not our property and we can't do what we want to do when we want to do it. So.
And Josh, the history on it was the county, they seek out, as Doug said, they seek out a local entity to operate, these things, and they got them obviously all over the state. And the county was that entity for, I don't know how long, but a long time, up until whatever it was around 2013 or 2012. And the county came to us at that point and said, we're getting out of this business, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to, just shut the gates and lock them. And we, as a Parks Board, said, we're going to take on an additional cost to pick these up. It's not currently in the budget at that time. It was not in the budget. And we talked about it. positive pluses and minuses of that, and ultimately the board at that time decided to take them on and to incur the cost and to make cuts in other places in order to be able to keep them open because of the public benefit. But then we went into our levy, the next levy cycle, and included them. They're in the comp plan and they're included in the levy that we went back to the public for. So I think my opinion is we made a commitment to the public and adjusted our budget. I mean, adjusted the levy rate to account for lots of things in the park budget, including the lakes. So I don't think we can go backwards. I think we need to sign this agreement. And then if there are other adjustments we need to make based on what we've learned over time, when we do the next levy to the public, we need to make those adjustments in that levy because we've already done it once.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess I don't know if this is even possible, but I mean, I literally went to Deer Lake probably about 80 times this summer. Took my daughters there and I went swimming, and like with the dock, it's patched over right now. They lost the ladder. Is there any way to put in the agreement that, or with the trees at Goss Lake, that if they're not going to take care of them, the parks will take care of them, but will bill Fish and Wildlife or something, so that stuff is able to get done like that. So there's not holes in the docks at Deer Lake and there's not those trees out there in Goss. Is that something you can put in the agreement?
That's a good question, Josh.
Well, and Derek is who we deal with. And he's pretty good. Like if we need gravel, he says, hey, buy gravel and send us the bill. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he is fairly receptive because he doesn't want to come out and do it. He doesn't have the time. So, in our winter work, that's when we would do things like this. It's just like taking a tree down. We're not going to take a tree down without permission.
No, and there's certain things that they won't give us permission to do. Like they have literally said you can't do that. So, Josh, to your question, it varies by item. Could we, do some things like that? Yeah, they have said, yeah, you can just go ahead and do it, and if you have the bandwidth and get it done, that's fine. The issue generally happens is when things are like happening like this, where the dock's breaking, it's because it's being used a lot. And for us to go in and repair it, we're in the midst of our busiest season. Now, we don't have the bandwidth to send two guys down there to repair something or to pull something out in the middle of summer. Now, could we do it in the off season? Sure. So, and it also too depends on the state budget, because we would have to get permission from them to spend state dollars. We couldn't spend state dollars. We couldn't do it and then bill them because we would be spending state dollars without their consent. We'd have to still ask for permission regardless.
The other issue we deal with is this is Fish and Wildlife, and swimming is not what they're after.
They don't care about swimming.
So their whole focus is on fishing and, access to bank fishermen and boat launches. So that dock may go away at some point when they get the new fishing dock installed or the launch dock installed with this new grant. I would not be surprised if that old dock goes away because swimming is not what they're after. And that's been pretty clearly stated to us. Mm-hmm. The other problem that we deal with is we're dealing with shoreline. Like I've asked them about weed removal or weed control. We're not registered to do any kind of spraying or anything like that. Around the water's edge. That's all on them. And so that's just another function. Our responsibility with this agreement is we maintain up to the water's edge. Anything on the water is not us.
So that's kind of where we are. They've asked if we would take these on again, all three of them. This is a board decision. It's a commitment through 2028. So it's an 8-year commitment. I'd look for a motion to either approve or to not approve. And that's up to you guys.
Yeah, and I'm ready to make a motion to approve, but I don't want to do it until anybody else has a chance to ask any questions or debate it any further.
So just so I understand, if the Parks does not take this on, or if it was decided that the Parks wasn't handling it, there's a good chance that these lakes could be just deserted and gated up. Nobody else is going to take it on.
It's a possibility. Yeah, I honestly don't see the county taking them on. I don't see WDFW right now expanding what they're doing. If anything, what it would do is they might shut them down for the rest of COVID and then open them up on a limited basis. But they could potentially padlock them. They could potentially just leave them open. That would be they are their properties. That would be their responsibility to find someone else to take them on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was just trying to understand. I didn't like reading that. The Parks is taking care of this, and at the Parks' expense. I didn't know about the gravel and stuff like that coming in that they pay for, and I would just like to see a little bit more leeway in the agreement, maybe, to let our staff do what needs to get done to make things safe for the community, for the people that are using it. But if that's not possible, I get that too. So.
The one thing I
Tom, you're breaking up.
Your internet's breaking up.
Them to pay for it, if possible, maybe we could add this, is pay for the septic pumping.
I'll make
part of that got cut off. Tom, you had bad internet. We couldn't hear some of it.
So the one thing I think he said was that we would pay for we pay for right now the vault toilets to be pumped out. We should identify that they are to pay for that.
Yeah. I don't see why that's something that's a district.
Yeah, that would help us.
Okay, so what I can do is I can say I would suggest that maybe what we do is approve the agreements with the proviso that they are to pay for septic pump out. Additionally pay for septic pump out at all 3 locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To Josh's point with the dock, I just think about this from a practicality standpoint of kids going there, public going there and using it. A lot of them go to swim. They go there to be on the beach, play around. And I'm listening to this, and maybe I missed something, but if we're in charge of the recreational part, and as Tom said, the Fish and Wildlife is concerned about fishing, they're concerned about access to the lake, boat ramps, and as such, how does the dock then get repaired as opposed to just saying life goes on, the dock falls apart, people are impacted? I know it's not a big deal, but it is to me, because I'm thinking about the poor kid who goes down and wants to swim, and there's holes in the dock, and there's no ladder, it's not even safe. And that's, if it means us stepping in, then maybe that's our responsibility. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we can't. So just clarity for me would help. I'm with Josh on this, that I think I don't quite understand why we can't take some action, or maybe suggest that these things need to be done at least.
Well, so to be clear, we do contact them with all of this and do ask them to do it. This is not a question of us not asking, WDFW to repair the dock and get it in working order. We do that every time we find something at any of these locations. That is something that how I explain this to when people call in and ask me about something with, a lake site, and they're saying, well, why don't we put in a new thing, or why don't we put in a new thing there, or do this at Deer Lake? I say, well, okay, so you need to understand that we are simply the caretaker here. We mow the grass, we clean the bathrooms, we take care of picking up trash. That's what we do. That is our role. We are there to keep it open so that you can use it. Beyond that, if it's a bigger item, we are happy to put you in touch with them or work with them and talk to them about it and get it done, but we don't have the authority to do it. So it's not that we're not contacting WDFW about repairs to the dock. We are. We don't take that lightly. Tom comes in, tells me, I send a message. If I don't get a message back, I make a phone call. This is not something where we're just letting it go. We try to do what we can. I don't know what kind of recourse we could put in the agreement, to make that more formal. That would be something for a legal mind to decide, and my mind doesn't work specifically that way. My thought would be is that we reiterate the septic pumping, and then maybe it's a conditional approval on this, or maybe you say, Doug, let's go back and talk to him, and maybe I involve 2 commissioners that are on the Lakes Commission, the Lakes Committee, and we talk to these people about this agreement and go, look, we have some concerns. I can go either way. I don't have a problem telling them you have to do septic pumping, and we have to have some sort of way, because right now when we bring you stuff, it's not getting done. So there has to be some sort of thing where if you don't respond to something after 3 attempts at contact, we have the authority to go in and repair it and send you a bill. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. So,
yeah, I think the way the agreement's structured, that, we are the caretaker of the property, and essentially it says we should give it back to them at the end of the agreement if the agreement terminates. In the same state we got it. So we shouldn't do any, shouldn't change it in any way that doesn't align with their intentions for the property. And I think in the past, as we've talked about some of these capital projects or larger projects, as Doug said, they are the ones who would be the applicant for a grant to get support for something like that. And it seemed like the last time around, they were very willing to work with us, on larger projects like that. So if we said, for example, we want to do Project X, we want to fix the hillside at Goss Lake, that would be a grant application that would be through them. But we would be a stakeholder in it. And from our last round, I think they would take those into the grant process, their grant process, if we push those projects to them. So to me, I think the really, really, really good part about this relationship is the lakes are open.
And I think that to make anything happen, we have to remain stakeholders and stay in an agreement. But also, if there's some way to improve the communication, maybe, there needs to be an annual review with them of the properties. When was the last time, what's his name, Derek? Like, when was that last time he walked through with, Doug or Tom or one of us? Something like that. Yeah. Just some sort of explaining to them, like, we're tired of talking to a wall.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. That's kind of, one of the bigger reasons why I wanted to have this discussion is I'm looking at this and going, well, we tried to have that meeting with Derek this spring. We try to have it every spring going into season to go, hey, Derek, come on out. Let's walk all 3 sites. He and Tom can go. Tom, and I can go. We do attempt to do that because we want to have the best things for our community. And they appreciate that, but at times they take advantage of the fact that we're going to do our best job, and they don't feel the need to come out here and check on us over and over again. Generally, if I get to a point where I finally get a hold of Derek, he is very responsive, but it's that initial getting him to actually see that, hey, we're serious, get out here. Once we get to that point, like he put in the whole Deer Lake, there is a grant application going for a whole new launch dock at Deer Lake. That's in the queue with the RCO right now. So that's a positive. Now, these are the kinds of the issues that we deal with these agreements on an ongoing basis, and this is where our frustration comes in. So our hands are a little bit tied. So I guess what I'm looking for, and I've kind of got some of it, is everybody seems to be kind of on the same page, is that, you know, we want them to be more responsive. How do we get that to happen? And maybe that's a conversation. I know they want to get these nailed down, but we're not stopping our maintenance right now. We're still going out to the lakes. So we could have the conversation prior to signing the agreements when we have the leverage, or we can have the conversation after we've signed the agreements when we have no leverage because we've already agreed to do it. To me, I think that maybe what I should do is, it sounds to me like everybody wants to have a further conversation about this. So my recommendation would be to talk to the two commissioners that are on the Lakes Committee and sit down and have a further conversation with this group, with the staff there, and say, look, we're on board. We want to keep these open, but you guys got to respond. And we want to take septic pumping, and that's on you guys because we can't afford to do that. And if we have repairs that you guys don't respond after 3 phone calls or 3 documented attempts at contact, we can just do it and send you the bill.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's just if there are safety issues,
right,
you know, that need to be addressed, and it's just like Matt said, we're all in this together. But it's got to be reciprocal. Same with the school district. You know, the school district has to work with us. They have to provide fields for their teams. The park, Fish and Wildlife, they have to work with the park districts, because you're right. The park district always does a good job. They try to do their best job. But it just doesn't feel like it's mutual as much. So,
and it hasn't been, because we are taking care of their property for them. What we get out of it is our community gets access to the lakes. So we're not getting a monetary benefit or a bonus from them for doing this. We're doing this as a service. That's why we're doing it. Now, that's not necessarily a reason that we should stop doing it. But what I'm saying is right now, my suggestion after hearing this is, let's not approve these. I would recommend we not approve these this month. That I contact the 2 commissioners that are on the Lakes Committee. We set up a meeting with Derek or whoever is working on these agreements, or both, and go, we want to have a Zoom meeting with you guys. Our commissioners had some concerns. Sit down, hammer it out, have them come back with a whole new agreement that includes, hey, if we don't hear from you, we can make a repair and bill you for it. So that then encourages them, or puts them on the hook for it. If they don't respond to 3 emails from me saying, this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue, I can then go back and say, all right, they haven't responded, get it fixed, let's fix it, let's move on, and let's send them a bill. So is that kind of what everybody's feeling? Okay, so no motion necessary at this point. I will take it back, and we will revisit that with the Lakes Committee.
Thanks, Doug.
okay.
All right, perfect. All right, 2 more items. I'm hoping these will be quick, and then we can be done. Playground wood fiber. So every couple years we do this. This is a sole source purchase where we don't have multiple quotes. We do budget for it, so this is within budget. It is over the limit I can approve. We cannot get 3 quotes because there are not 3 sources for this. There is 1. The quote is under the amount budgeted, and the staff recommends approval of this. This is to replenish the fiber which is the fall surface within the playgrounds, on the 2 playgrounds within Community Park and the sports complex. Staff is recommending approval of this.
When was the last time it was replaced?
2 years ago.
And has this been kind of a every 2 to 3 year thing?
Yes.
Yes. This is a blown-in product, so we get a truckload. It's a blower truck. They come in and they basically address all the low areas and kind of do a skim coat across the whole thing. But it's about every 2 years when we have money.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions on this, or does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and have the wood fiber blown in to the park.
I'll second that.
Okay, I think we have a second. All in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Josh, aye.
Perfect. Okay, and then the last thing is really more just getting you the information. We have sat down with staff, and staff has put together the initial draft of the 2021 budget. We have made some very conservative plans for next year. Not sure right now what we're going to be looking at with the COVID continuing and when that's going to be hopefully under control completely. So we have been conservative in our estimates. What I will say is that has resulted in lower expenses, which just by that nature has reduced our beginning cash requirement as well as our principals, our beginning cash, and our fund balance, ending reserve balance have both been reduced because they are both based on expenses. So we've reduced our revenues in programs and our expenses in programs. Everything else is fairly straightforward. This whole document will be updated. You do have access to it. What I would ask at this point, this is not a vote item. This is not even a discussion item at this point. This is more a presentation of here's our initial draft. I would ask that each of you take some time, drill down into it, and look for any questions you have. Look for any concerns you might have. Look for anything that doesn't look right for you. And sit down over the next couple of weeks and do that and get back to me with any questions, concerns, thoughts prior to the week before our next board meeting, so that I can then sit down, because we have our board budget workshop next month in October at 6 p.m. So any questions, concerns, things that come up in that interim, we can address at that point and answer those questions in the budget workshop with everybody there. If it's a simple question that's something you don't understand, or if you want to walk through the budget with myself or with staff, that's perfectly fine. We can do that on an individual basis and get that all figured out and answer any questions you may have. But this is more of a, here's the initial information, here's the initial draft, get back to us with questions. The only other thing I'll let you know, we have not yet received our exact or defined levy amount from the county. We generally get that at the end of September. So we are anticipating and projecting here with what that levy amount should be, but we do not anticipate a huge variance from what we're planning on.
All right, any questions?
All right, so drill down into that. And if you have questions as you go, write them down, get back to me, and we can sit down. If you want to go through it with us, if you want to go through it with me, I can walk through it with you. I can bring Peggy in to answer any specific questions on certain things, or Tom or Carrie on their specific areas. That's all I have.
Could you walk through like what the process is? So like this is the initial draft, and then the workshop.
So at the workshop, we will answer any questions that the board has. We'll have an updated version. As we get more information, we will send out updated versions. We will answer any questions at the board workshop and kind of talk through it at that point, work through it with you. We once again are only actually budgeting for 2021. 2022 we budget for next year. This projection, the 5-year projection, is as accurate as we can make it, but again, we don't know our levy for next year until the end of September, so we really have no clue what our levy for 2022 is going to be, or 2023. So we try and project as best we can and do it with the best information we have available, but this is really, the 5 years is just a kind of projection. So it'll be discussion, board questions in October, more discussion in October. If there's more stuff that you need us to bring back, we can do that. We've generally never had to do anything after that point. This includes all of the salary increases and changes based on the salary plan. So this is already in there. Nothing, we've got the cost of living increases already factored in. The staff being moved to their appropriate steps and moved up a step if they need to be is already factored into this. So that's already contained in here. We then take this back, and if there's any changes needed after the board meeting, we make those and get that back out to the board for any questions, concerns. In November at our board meeting, we have the budget hearing, which is when we present the budget for public comment. That's prior to our November board meeting. And then at the November board meeting, it needs to be approved by the end of November so we can send it into the county. That's our process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all I have for you tonight.
All right. Anybody else have anything?
Don't forget to send in the email about the voucher approval, please.
Yes, please send in your emails on voucher approval.
I'm sorry, because I wasn't at the beginning. What's the dollar amount that we're approving? The dollar amount?
It's in the email.
I believe it's 81,000 something.
Yeah, it's in the email that I sent to you. It's at the very top, but
81,500.
Okay, thanks, Peggy.
81,580 and 97 cents.
Yeah, 8158097.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. That's all I got.
All right. All right. Well, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:11.
Thank you, everyone. That was a long one. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Be well.
Here.